Okay, welcome to Into the Channel podcast, primarily about women's football. Before we hit the pitch, if you enjoy the show or love women's football as much as your boys do, come kick it with us already. Subscribe, follow YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to watch or listen. Leave us a review over your favorite podcast app. Links to all of our socials in the show notes of this episode. I am your host, Dino de Cespedes, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel. What is up, man?
I'm feeling all right, buddy. I would say that was 2 really good days of football we just had.
2 monster days of football. Good matches, good stakes, machinations having to do with the quarterfinals, teams getting through, teams getting eliminated. A ton to talk about. Both of our teams were in action. That was exciting. Mr. Grant Engel, I think we're ready, man. Where do you want to get started?
Let's get started on your account. Let's do this by chronological order. We make no secret on this podcast. I'm a big fan of chronological order. Let's start with Wolfsburg 5, Galatasaray 0.
This one was interesting. Wolfsburg obviously playing with lots of stakes. They're chasing Roma. We've talked about the revenge tour. This was this squad's 100th Champions League match, and I think this one's going to go down in history as the Alex Pop game. Or maybe one of many Alex Pop games. Maybe one of the 2024 group stage Alex Pop games. She was dominant, scored 2 early, ends the day with a hattie, plus 2 assists, 5 goal contributions on 5 Wolfsburg goals. I think towards the end of the match, I think she just got a little bored scoring goals. So she's just like, let me just start distributing, because her passing was almost maybe as impressive. I was going to say her passing was as impressive as her scoring on this day. She was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, she was just unbelievable in this match. And so in honor of her, what do you say we Alexandra pop these beers before it gets too late?
Well done.
Terrible joke. I appreciate you supporting me, even though puns are stupid.
I love puns.
What a good teammate. Yeah, I mean, her ability to head the ball is just unmatched. I mean, they talked about it on the broadcast. She just dominated the run of play. It felt like Wolfsburg pretty much got whatever they wanted out there.
Absolutely. And then Eugénie Minga had an absolute laser, assisted by Alex Pop, of course, for Wolfsburg's 3rd goal. That one was a backbreaker. But you can also look at the stats. Wolfsburg outshot Galatasaray. Get ready for this. 51-2.
Come on, man. I mean,
tough to get more lopsided than that. Galatasaray keeper, though, Gamze Nurjaman, who we've called out a bunch of times in the show, another solid match. I think she's sort of like carving out a nice little niche for herself as a kind of like a big game keeper. She saved 14 of 19 shots on target from Wolfsburg. The German side dominant, though, 20 corners to 0. Yeah. Also dominant in crosses, 58-3. One of my main takeaways, though, if I wanted to get a little bit critical, I think Lynette Bierenstein has to play better for this side to really kind of like make a deep run. She's getting into good areas. It was mentioned on the telecast multiple times that she's in really good scoring form in Frauen Bundesliga. But in this one, 9 shots, 4 on target, no goals, obviously. And she connected on just 55% of her passes, 10 out of 18. She just was a little bit off kilter. I think she's still looking for her first Champions League goal for Wolfsburg, if I'm not mistaken. And she just might be pressing a little bit too hard.
Yeah, it's a great point. I didn't even consider that. I mean, I realized, we had talked about her form in league play being outstanding. But yeah, it would be relatively understandable for her maybe to be pressing a little bit, in the sense that it's her first time in the Champions League with Wolfsburg. It's first time on this kind of stage with their new team. You want to play well. You're brought in pretty much to supercharge the attack for this like kind of historic club. So it would be worse if she wasn't playing well in the league or in the Champions League. So maybe if you're Wolfsburg, you're kind of like, okay, we'll shepherd you along, but let's make sure we get there, because they're going to need her if they're going to really go really deep in this thing and have a look at winning it.
Yeah, that's definitely the thinking. And Wolfsburg, after a really slow start, obviously they lose the first 2 in the group stage, didn't score a goal in either of those matches. Now level on points with Roma, 6 points each. Wolfsburg, a couple big matches looming. December 11th, they'll be back taking on Roma. That one's at home. December 17th, they travel to Lyon to close out the group stage. I'm not sure how much we learned in this one. They wanted to come out, get a big win. That's exactly what they did. They wanted to dominate. That's exactly what they did. And now they've got They've got 2 monster ones left, and they'll very much have to earn their place in the quarterfinals if they're going to get through.
Yeah, I mean, it turns that Roma-Wolfsburg match into a massive game for both sides. We talked about the first tiebreaker in the Women's Champions League after points is points against the opponent you're tied with. Mm-hmm. And then the second tiebreaker is goal differential against the team that you're tied with. So let's say Wolfsburg beats Roma 2-0, and then they just go and get cracked by Lyon. Roma would have to could still beat Galatasaray, but because Roma only beat Wolfsburg 1-0 in the first fixture, Wolfsburg would still progress to the knockout stage. So it's a massive, massive game for Roma. You got to keep it close, and preferably you win it so you don't got to worry about these things.
Yeah, huge stakes. Super excited for that one. Let's shift gears, though. I want to head to the Netherlands. FC Twente 2, Real Madrid, My Blancas 3. What'd you see in this one?
I thought Twente was able to kind of execute a similar game plan they did in the first match versus Madrid. They held the ball. They tried to minimize your Blanca's attacking threats. They just didn't leak the goals like they did in the first game. Mm-hmm. They scored the opener, a seeing eye free kick by Alika Tuin, whose name you hear a lot on the broadcast because she always seems to be like involved in the play. And it falls right to Jamie Ravensbergen, who taps it in for the opener. So Twente takes the lead 1-0 there. It's right around the 30th minute. But Real Madrid found a way to really march back. And it was on the strength of Linda Caicedo, who just played like an absolute hurricane out there.
She was awesome. I mean, monster stat line too. 1 goal, 1 assist, 4 shots, 3 on target, 6 shot creating actions, and just a ton of ground covered up that left-hand side. I mean, every time you look up, she's just flying past somebody or going right at somebody else. Absolute handful, and definitely a game changer in this one.
Yeah, she gets the goal before halftime. And how many times do you see in football where it's just one of those things where the favorite is down and they storm back and they get that equalizer before halftime, and that's just like, oh boy. Mm-hmm. You hate to call something a backbreaker, especially in a high-level match like this, because Twente is a good side. We've talked about them a lot. We had high hopes for them coming into this. But when you give that up at +2 of stoppage time right before you get to the half, right when you think you're going to have some relief, it's only natural to have like a kind of a little bit of a mental letdown in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's not just a random event either. You know, this is what good teams do. This is what more skilled teams do. They understand it's getting later. It's harder to stay focused. It's harder to chase, harder to defend. Those are the opportunities, like that last 5-10 minutes of each half. It's just easier to kind of find a little crease, find somebody napping a little bit. But shout out to Twente, still a scrap, you know, come second half.
They hung tough throughout the second half. I mean, I really think you could make an argument they had the better chances over the course of like the end of that match. Mm-hmm. Even after Madrid goes up in the 71st on, again, the strength of Caicedo streaking down the wing and getting the ball into the middle of the Senior Brun, Twente continued to fight back. And even though they, like I said, they had the better chances over different stretches of the match, they get caught in transition with one of the last players you would want to get caught in transition by, and that's Alba Redondo. Mm-hmm. If you look up, tuck away the goal or tuck the shot into the corner, Alba Redondo tucked that into the corner. That is exactly what that phrase means.
Beautiful finish, professional goal scorer finish. Mm-hmm. And I'll say in the moment, you know, it kind of felt like the game was kind of well in hand, but obviously we see what happens later in the match with Twente kind of storming back a little bit. You know, not a ton of time left on the clock, but that Redondo goal ends up being the difference.
Yeah, I mean, again, credit to Twente's mentality. Sophie Brake scores that absolute banger at the end, and it ends up being if it wasn't the last kick of the match, it was the second to last kick of the match. I don't know if they even let him kick off. I think it might have been the end of it. So it's too little too late for them. Like you said, the Redondo goal is the difference. That's why you sign Alba Redondo in the offseason.
100%. Yeah. Twente, unfortunately eliminated. They go out with a banger. Real Madrid, congratulations to them. They advance to the quarterfinals, along with another Group B team who we'll get to in just a moment here. But let's shift gears. I want to keep it moving. I want to keep the same lightning fast pace. You know, I want to be Linda Caicedo running up the left-hand side.
There we go.
A lot of ground to cover, a lot of matches, a lot of football. Let's get to it. Lyon 4, Roma 1. Oof, this was a toughie for your guy. A real toughie. So to rewind back, I'm not going to dust off any old clips, but I did predict that Roma would escape this reverse fixture with at least a point. Feeling good for a good chunk of it. I want to fast forward. Well, actually, let me start with the starting lineups. No Diani to start. No Samabasha to start. And then no Evelyn Vienne for Roma. This one, scoreless for the grand majority of the game. 74th minute, beautiful 5-pass sequence. Starts from the keeper. Ball works its way all the way up the field, including Evelyn Vienne getting a touch. Ends with Giulia Dragoni. She gets a hold of one. One touch, smokes it past Endler. Breaks the deadlock, 74th minute. And now Roma is up 1-0. Definitely felt vindicated in the moment. I think the one prevailing notion before this moment was Lyon was better. Lyon was more athletic at every single position. And the only way Roma was going to stay in this match or be any kind of competitive was with a sequence like this. Let's string together 4 or 5 pinpoint perfect passes. Let's get creative with some runs. Let's create some space. Moment of magic, which Dragoni creates to put them up 1-0. This was pretty much the only way that it was going to happen.
100%. I think we talked about it in the preview that Roma needed to find a way to get through that Lyon midfield. And if you're going to do that, sometimes it takes a 5-pass sequence. And we've talked about how Lyon's defense and their midfield is able to shrink your margin for error and make you make 5 good passes in a row. And so Roma was able to do that. Dragoni hits the banger. First line in my notes, was Dino right? I think Dino might be right. And so I was pulling for you, man. I was excited for it. The reason I gave you the side eye at the opening of this segment was you said the scoreline 4-1. I totally get Lyon's a better team. It didn't feel like a 4-1 match, even at the final whistle.
Definitely didn't. But with that said, it's easy to see how this scoreline happens.
That's true. Yeah,
so I mentioned at the top, no Diani to start, no Basha either. That's an incredible amount of creativity with just those 2 players.
Yeah.
Now, you got to give credit to that Lyon midfield, Marozan, Lindsay Horan, and Damaris. Really, really difficult to contend with in the midfield. They made it really tough all day today. But I think Lyon was missing some of that creativity.
Yeah.
And then 2.5 minutes after the goal, Diani gets on the board with an equalizer. I'm not going to lie, man. It felt like a backbreaker in the moment. Roma had done so much work. I mentioned, the athletic disadvantage that they had, the strength disadvantage, pretty much at every spot on the field, they were playing underdog football.
Yep.
So for them to kind of break through on the road and then give it right back a couple minutes later, I'm like, this is really not good. And then it turns out just a couple minutes after that, off another corner, Diani finds herself completely unmarked. I don't know, 2 yards from goal.
Yeah, maybe.
with enough time to chest it down and smash in a volley. I mean, you just knew that this Roma side kind of was broken after those two moments. And I think that's how you quickly go from 1-0, 1-1, 2-1, and then you end up with that 4-1 scoreline in pretty much a blink of an eye.
Yeah, I think I want to amend the way I worded that when I said it didn't feel like a 4-1 match. It definitely felt like a 4-1 match at the end. I was left with the feeling this shouldn't have been a 4-1 match. And it's because that set piece defending was dreadful. I don't think anybody on that bus after the match was looking forward to watching that film the next day or the day after, whenever they get back into the training grounds. Really a bummer to give that away. Saki Kumagai, one of our favorites. Not a great moment, I think, on that Diani second goal. Just gets put in the blender and just kind of, falls down, essentially. You hate to just say it like that about a great player, but not what you want from your set piece defending. Let's say that.
Not at all. And then Lyon decided to, come back after going up 2-1 and play a couple of the hits, a couple of the oldies. Eugénie Le Sommer, great goal. Genius assist from Diani. Absolute game breaker as well. I mean, imagine bringing a player like that off the bench. What are you going to do? And then Wendy Renard header to make it 4-1. So just run of the mill Lyon stuff. Nothing really to see here. If you just looked at the scoreline, you would think exactly kind of like what probably a lot of people think. Okay, another day at the office. But this one was extremely exciting. And then a little sad at the end when you saw kind of the air come out of Roma's balloon. Unfortunately, Roma's still very much in it, as mentioned, even on points with
gotta win
with Wolfsburg, and they've got that huge one coming up. I think the way that it shakes out, though, the Galatasaray matchup, Matchday 6 probably won't come into play. It's looking like our Twitter audience probably was right on the money, predicting or voting that this Roma side would probably be the one left out in the cold.
One quick thing, Eugénie Le Sommer, that goal was her 49th all-time UEFA Women's Champions League goal. That is 3 more than Marta of the Orlando Pride. She scored her Champions League goals, I know, as part of Umeå, where she won her Champions League trophy. She also played for Rosengard out of Sweden, and she played for another Swedish team. I can't remember off the top of my head. No disrespect to them. We were trying to keep it moving. But 49 Women's Champions League goals, incredible for Eugénie Le Sommer. However, it is 15 behind the record holders. Le Sommer is alone in third place. 15 behind her teammate, Norwegian legend Ada Hegerberg, who has 64 Champions League goals. Not too shabby.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And Ada Hegerberg is still like in her 20s, right?
No way, I don't think.
She's 29.
Get the fuck out of here. Jesus Christ.
The only reason I know that is because I had that same reaction when I found that out, because I'm like, oh yeah, she's been around forever. Yeah, she's like a legend. Of course, yeah. No.
Good Lord. Oh yeah, her sister Andrine is older than her.
Yeah, when I discovered this stat, she was 28. And I was like, this can't be right.
Goodness.
Yeah, it's wild. I'm leaving that in, by the way.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, it's a learning podcast.
So let's keep the learning going. Okay. Chelsea 3, Celtic 0. What do we learn from this one?
Chelsea's still really good. Lucy Bronze shows up in big games. What else did we learn? Chelsea, really good at short corners. That's how they got their first 2 goals in this match. The short corner ends up at the feet of Kat Macario. She plays in a beautiful pass to Lucy Bronze. She has a volley, probably a little too easy, probably a little too much space for Bronze. Gets the goal in the first minute of the match. Not ideal for the hoops. Next, Chelsea is mostly dominating the ball in those first 20 minutes, but Celtic is holding up pretty well until you have another short corner. This time it's Johanna Rytting-Kanerud plays in a bullet pass to Captain. She heads it in for her first ever UEFA Women's Champions League goal, only 48 behind Eugénie Le Sommer, only 63 behind Ada Hegerberg. And really, I mean, just credit to Celtic, man. Like, they played great in Glasgow. And this one had the opportunity to get really, really ugly, but they were able to muck it up enough. I think they showed a lot of character out there. You're not playing to lose 3-0, but, you see in some of these games when you have the absolute elite teams with a big talent advantage, you can see these scores get really, really ugly. And especially when you're Celtic and you have to contend with Johanna Rytting-Kanerud streaking up the wing at 1,000 miles per hour. And then you're like, oh, okay, thank God they're taking off Kat Macario at halftime. Oh, wait a minute, Mayra Ramirez is coming in. That just has to be unpleasant to be a defender in that situation.
It's got to be really tough. When you look at the stats in this one, Chelsea outshoots Celtic 24-3.
Yeah.
The one thing that they did have going for them, I thought Celtic forced them into some tougher looks.
Yeah.
Only 5 of Chelsea's shots were on target of the 24. So not the worst day defensively. I thought Celtic, again, they held up pretty well offensively. I don't think they had the same zip that they did in Glasgow.
Right.
But yeah, at this point, Chelsea, 12 points from 4 matches, and they punched their ticket into the quarterfinals as well.
You got to love it. Those European nights, they get back-to-back matches. They play at Celtic Park. They play at Stamford Bridge. Historic stuff for the club. Like you said, they're going to be making their way back. You just hope that the club continues to fund them and do the things necessary to make sure they're consistently competing.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's shift gears to Thursday. Little team from Manchester, the Manchester City Sky Blues, visiting Sweden to take on Hammarby. What'd you see in this one? What do we need to know about this one?
Okay. I am many things, but one of the main things that I am is an unbiased journalist.
Of course.
A truth teller, a man who believes in fairness and justice. And so I said something similar to this when Manchester City beat Barcelona in the first match of the group stage. And I'm going to say it on the reverse side here. I think if you watched the first half of this match and you didn't have previous context, even though City was ahead 1-0 at halftime, you could have reasonably watched this and said, I think the green and white team is as good or maybe better than the blue team. I liked Hammarby's first half. I thought they were aggressive. I thought they put pressure on City in their own half. I think one telling stat, and now obviously a lot of teams, especially if you play kind of possession based, you're going to have more passes in your defensive half than you will in your attacking half. But in this first half, City had nearly 70% of the ball, and that yielded 178 passes in their defensive half versus 75 in the attacking half.
Wow.
It was a lot of them trying to maneuver the ball around just to contend with Hammarby, really putting some pressure on them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I keep going back to the environment, when I'm thinking about Hammarby. And, just a quick diversion here, but covering the Pride recently, I was really surprised over the last few weeks how many times it almost feels like every player at the presser, Seb Hines, when he gets on stage at the presser, everybody mentions the crowd and everybody mentions how they feed off the crowd, how they feel the crowd, how they hear the crowd. I kind of always felt like the crowd situation was a little bit BS. And I'm not sure if it's like a soccer thing or a European soccer thing or like a women's soccer thing, but the crowds very clearly affect games more than I think our jaded American sports fan, brains are sort of used to, because it did feel like Hammarby fed off it big time. And I think you're totally right. When you look at like one stat that sticks out like a sore thumb, the XG differential for the entire match, Manchester City 1.0, Hammarby 2.1. You look at shots, 14-14. You look at shots on target, 6-5 in favor of Manchester City. So I think even extending past the first half, this was a pretty even match.
Yeah, man, that's a banger of a set. I know you're a fan of real G versus XG, but I think that is telling. I think Hammarby had their chances, and they took their chances pretty well. I know they only ended up with one goal, but I thought they were capitalizing on the moments that they were able to hold the ball and get forward, and they did so aggressively and with a lot of purpose. I got to talk about Bunny Shaw's first goal of this match. She scored both of them. For anybody who hasn't seen, you should watch both of them. We got to talk about this, and I'm going to turn into strident, annoying guy here for a second. But so City's able to break through I think it was the 31st minute, I want to call it. Live fact check. It was the 31st minute. All right, nailed it. So she gets the ball. Yui Hasegawa pushes the ball upfield, gets to Bunny Shaw. She cuts the ball onto her right foot, takes a deflection, and it kind of sails. It's one of those kind of like really high arcing deflections, sails over the keeper into the back of the net. Here's where things get confusing for me. Bunny runs toward the end line to celebrate, like hundreds upon hundreds of footballers before her. And then the first thing you see on the broadcast is that she's clearly hit by some kind of projectile and reacts to it. And I think the reporting has said it appeared to have been some kind of coin. And then, this is where things get really confusing. She is shown a yellow card by referee Silvia Gasparati. So I would like, and let me just make sure, let's do another quick live fact check. Okay, back from the fact check. So yeah, the reporting I'm seeing from Sky Sports from earlier today, we're recording this on Friday evening, is that, it appears it was a coin. And the new reporting that I'm now seeing here, and this is according to UEFA, quote, proceedings have been opened against Hammarby IF for throwing of objects, end quote. That's from a UEFA spokesperson. So first of all, to anybody who throws things at athletes on the field, you're lame. Don't do that. It's stupid. However, we can leave that off to the side. I would like one person, whether it's from UEFA, the PGMOL, IFAB, FIFA, Interpol, or NASA, somebody from an organization with an acronym, to please explain to me why Bunny Shaw gets a yellow card for that celebration. The next part of the quote from the UEFA spokesperson is Manchester City player Khadija Shaw received a yellow card following her goal presentation for unsporting conduct, end quote. What are you talking about? Because I didn't see that on the broadcast. I don't know why she has that yellow card. I joke about being over serious sports guy, but somebody show me where the unsporting conduct was. That's just silly.
Refs are going to ref, I think. That's kind of like my best explanation. You do hope that, I'm not sure what the accumulation situation is, but you do hope that something like that is wiped off the record and made right after the fact. That's something that we'll have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, totally. We're calling for the full void. Hopefully the Braun Battalion, we already know the Braun Battalion are against UEFA. Come rock with us again. UEFA completely out of their element once again, just making bozo decisions. I digress. Back to the football. After halftime, Hammarby comes out swinging as usual, I think as expected. Julie Blokstad and Ellen Wangerheim continue to just get into dangerous areas. Blokstad drives the ball up the field to start things. She then cleans up a bad touch by Smila Volato and then sends in a perfect cross. Wangerheim has a tap in for the equalizer, 1-1. And it just felt like Hammarby was finding a way to attack the space between the midfield and the defenders really in an aggressive, purposeful way, like I mentioned earlier. And it was setting them up for some good opportunities.
Yeah, it's a great adjustment because we talked about them wanting to kind of go over the top. So once City's kind of prepared for that, that's kind of like the counter move to the move.
Yep.
I thought it worked really well. And, you mentioned when we were talking Twente Real Madrid, Bunny's goal in the first half wasn't right on the heels of halftime, but it was a little bit unfortunate.
Yeah.
The deflection, flies up in the air, could have gone anywhere, goes into the back of the net. A lot of times that one is a little bit of a turd in the punch bowl, but it just seemed to give them a little bit more fuel, a little bit more energy. They didn't want to go out like that. And that adjustment, I think, caught City a little bit off guard and was definitely paying dividends.
Credit to Hammarby. Their crowd was obviously super in it, like you had mentioned, but it was time to take that L because Jess Park, we talked about Mary Fowler a week or so ago. There are just those games, and we've talked about it's hard for Mary Fowler to keep up consistently, like the rare air that she's able to kind of inhabit at times. But there are just times where Mary Fowler is kind of a little invisible in some of these matches, but that opens up opportunities for Jess Park to cut through your defense and then either rip shots herself or distribute the ball like the genius passer she is. This time she gets the ball to Bunny Shaw, always a pretty good idea. Bunny gets the ball, is able to get away from a defender, and then just hit an absolute missile, as I believe the commentator described it as. Top corner. That's where Mama hides the cookies. 2-1. Felt like we were in good shape after that.
They get the win. They're 12 points from 4 matches, first in the group. Some machinations to think through. So City's couple of matches that are still left, December 12th versus STP, December 18th at Barcelona. That looks like it's going to be for first place in the group. I love to look at this stuff just because I love to kind of understand the stakes. So if City beats St. Pölten, all they need is a draw at Barcelona to take the group. If City beats St. Pölten and outpoints Barcelona, what Barcelona does versus Hammarby, they also take the group. Or you can look at it and say, okay, City's 3 points ahead of Barcelona. What happens in the St. Pölten match kind of doesn't matter. Just get through that final Barcelona match with at least a draw, and then City takes the group. And we talked about the importance of winning the group, because if you come in second, more than likely you've got to beat 3 number 1 seeds to take the whole thing, which is a much, much tougher road.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to go for it. I mean, theoretically, you could rest some players and rotate the squad, which might be helpful for when your team is pretty hurt the way Manchester City is. But if you want that, number 1 seed, you're going to have to go for it against Barcelona in Barcelona. And also, I just don't think it'd be good for your psyche, because if you go in there and think like, okay, let's play for a draw against Barcelona, you might lose 4-1 against Barcelona, because it doesn't matter if you're a big team or not. They could run it up on you. So I think they're in a really fascinating spot. Gareth Taylor has some big decisions to make. It's a great point by you. Can I just do one more? I got real caught up on the Bunny Shaw thing. We have to shout out in this match, Chiara Keating played absolutely fantastic. I said, it looked good for City after Bunny put us ahead 2-1, but it required great saves and smart play from Chiara Keating to get them across the finish line.
Yeah, great to have a second keeper like that can step into a match like this and produce at that level. Still so young, Chiara Keating. I thought a little early in the match, there was some moments that I kind of wasn't sure. It's like, all right, we haven't seen Chiara Keating in a high leverage match like this in a minute, but I think she definitely grew into the match and was rock solid for sure.
Yeah, she's excellent. I've been a big fan of her for a little while. I was curious when they brought in Yamashita, but now it's not a situation where if you think you have 2 number 1s, you don't have any. I think they legitimately have 2 number 1s.
I think so too. Yeah, no argument there. Just did a quick double check. It looks like Barcelona, Hammarby, City, St. Pölten are taking place at the same time. So
interesting.
I don't think, in the absolute off chance that Barcelona, Hammarby draw, we saw it last year versus Benfica. It's not impossible, although highly, highly improbable. If you're City, I don't think you can risk not taking the group in the instance that happens.
Yeah.
So if they do draw, City's got, a win could clinch the groups for City.
Yeah.
So I do feel like, rest could make some sense, but I actually think they kind of go for it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you have to. And St. Pölten played Man City tough last time. Mm-hmm. So, I know this one's going to be in Manchester, but why risk it?
Totally agree with that. Let's head up to Norway. Back on my beat. Mm-hmm. Vålerenga 1, Bayern Munich 1. Stop me if you've heard this one. Great atmosphere in Oslo. Champions League football in Norway. In the evening time, what else is new? This match told an interesting story. So Bayern way outclassing Vålerenga pretty much in the first half and for most of the match, I would say. But Vålerenga looked bigger. They looked stronger. They looked more athletic. They looked imposing. And it almost felt like as the match went on, Bayern had to kind of find ways around that Vålerenga defense. I was 0% surprised that this one ended in a draw. Super hard fought match from end to end. A lot to discuss in this one. Anything about this matchup catch your eye?
I mean, Karina Sevic was awesome. I thought she was absolutely fantastic. Olag Tveten, I thought also looked really great. There were multiple opportunities, it felt like, for Vålerenga to not only win this game, but kind of pull away and create some distance to win the match.
Yeah, there was a Tveten strike in the 55th that somehow, shout out to Bayern keeper Ena Mambatovic, who got the lightest of fingertips on it, just enough fingertip to keep the game 0-0 in the 55th. That strike ends up bouncing off both posts. Somehow still doesn't find, still doesn't cross the line. I got a weird AP physics flashback, SAT question flashback. I'm just like, how is this even possible that a ball could hit both and trickle away?
Can I ask a question about this?
Yeah.
Less of a question. I'd like to introduce a game.
Love it.
On the idea, the first thing I thought about when I saw that is I know my good pal, the host of this show, Dino de Cespedes, is not a big fan of the term when announcers say a player is unlucky. So I'd like to introduce a game very intelligently named Unlucky with a question mark. And I would like you to be the arbiter and tell me if this is unlucky. When you hit a shot and the keeper gets like a fingertip on it and it hits both posts, is it fair to say that is unlucky for the player?
Man, I still say no.
Yes.
To me, keeper made a play. Keeper made a play, man. What are you going to do?
Awesome.
if you want to score, don't let her get her fingertip on it.
There he is.
Put a little dab of mustard, a little extra dab of mustard on it. Maybe a couple extra leg extensions in the gym before kickoff, and that'll give you the extra juice you need.
There we go.
To find the back of that net. No, that's the way the ball bounces. It was a great strike, but phenomenal interjection by the keeper to keep it 0-0 as mentioned, and totally co-signed your Karina Šević point. She was a monster. She was so good, so fun to watch. She had 1 progressive carry, 6 progressive passes, 5 shot creating actions. She was all over the place and created a ton of gravity.
Yeah.
She was just dragging Bayern defenders wherever she went. On the offensive side, Linda Dahlmann, I thought was Bayern's most threatening player.
Yeah.
Wasn't able to cash in, but Bayern does bring on Jovana Damjanovic a little bit later in the game, and one of their go-to players this season, Pernille Harder, starts in action, finds Julia Gvin up the right-hand side, who we talked about a ton last week, pinpoint cross. Vålerenga had been defending really, really well up to that point. They're the kind of team that will not panic when the ball's pinging around the 18. They're like, no, we know where we are. We're in our spots. We've got everything covered. Just to see them give up a goal on a little bit of like a fall asleep kind of play. But you got to give it to Bayern. Great ball from Harder, great ball from Gvin. And then the finish, still a little bit to do there. And yeah, that puts Bayern up 1-0.
Love the intensity on the face of Damjanovic. Gvin with her arm around her as she just goes to the crowd and just pumps her fist. That's what football is all about, except when football is also all about the underdog coming back and equalizing late.
Let's go. Yeah. So a little bit later in the match, Heiders Dottir gets it to Emma Stolen-Gotha, who finds Elise Thorsnes for a monster goal to keep Vålerenga's Champions League hopes alive. That goal 100% deserved, giving the Norwegian champions their first Champions League point. Just a really exciting moment. The Arsenal fan inside me gave a very stern Damjanovic level fist pump with the same level of intensity. I was very excited about Bayern dropping points in this one, but super great moment for Vålerenga. This one also pretty even when you look at some of the key stats. Both teams manage 11 shots, 6 on target for Bayern, 4 for Vålerenga. Bayern advances. Vålerenga, fortunately, this is the end of the road for them. You look at Bayern's next 2, they've got a couple big ones. December 12th versus Juventus. December 18th, they head to North London to play Arsenal. For the group right now, they're 1 point ahead and a +3 goal differential in terms of the head-to-head between those 2 clubs.
Yep, it's going to make things very, very interesting. Maybe we can talk about it later. Maybe we won't touch on it. Do you remember all the way back to that 5-2 loss that your Gunners had? And you said something, I think it was something to the tune of, "We stink."
Nah, I don't really remember that.
Okay, man, I must have made that up. Sorry about that. My apologies for misquoting you.
No, I mean, I do remember that. But to be fair, and I hate to do it to the guy, that was Jonas Eidevall's Arsenal.
There we go. Yes, right under the bus. See ya, Jonas.
Nice and warm under there. Yeah, a lot of cold European nights this time of year. Speaking of Arsenal won, Juventus 0. Arsenal punches their ticket to the quarterfinals. As mentioned, we're going to see who takes this group between Arsenal and Bayern. This one made me sweat. Not going to lie. Juventus came out really good defending, really confident defending. And the thing I kept thinking about over the course of a very nervy first half was my observation from last week. I think these teams are a lot closer than that 4-0 scoreline would indicate. And that first half definitely bore that out.
Yeah, I mean, nervy really from the opening whistle, it felt like as a neutral. Mm-hmm. If you're Juventus, I think you really got to be, again, terrible pun here, but it's really not intended. You got to be kicking yourself after this match. Like, Cantore doesn't play that well. Vangsgaard didn't really look that threatening. And you lose 1-0 in London. And it's just like, that was a golden opportunity for you to really take like a big leap as a club and just have put a feather in your cap in terms of results. And they just really didn't do a lot with the ball, it felt like.
Yeah, I think Juventus, I mean, they're in a good position in Serie A Femminile.
Sure.
I think they're still top of the table there, but they've been really wobbly. And I think actually watching the Vålerenga side against Bayern, if that team came to North London, or if we had to go there today and play that team, or a Hammarby, I think it's a different result. I think Juventus is probably in a rough patch right now, definitely to Arsenal's advantage. I don't think any Arsenal fan should be getting too over the moon about kind of like what we saw today. Ton of empty possession. I think that was like a really, really big issue. You look at the possession numbers, 73% possession for the Gunners. They completed 753 passes, 87% completion. The XG number, 3.7 for Arsenal to 0.5 for Juventus.
Yeah,
that's a tremendous delta between XG and real G. I mean, you already know that's going to make me sick to my stomach. Didn't like it one bit. And there was some talk on the telecast about Stina Blackstenius versus Alessia Russo. I kind of sneaky feel like the answer is like, we should probably be playing both of them because they do different things. They can kind of play off each other and maybe reconfigure some of the midfield situations to make this more of a reality. Blackstenius comes on late for Caitlin Ford.
Yeah.
Lena Hurtig comes on and I think brings a different energy, brings some different spacing, some different movements. She had really great looks. She came really close on a header, then had a point blanker that she just totally whiffed on. So I was really glad to kind of see her cash that final one. But you look at those XG numbers, those possession numbers, those passing numbers, and then you look at just 9 shots, 2 on target, the single goal really, really late in the match, in a match that they needed, to be able to kind of punch their ticket. Not the most encouraging result for my Gunners. I'm not going to say they stink. I'm going to go ahead and, maybe retire that one for a while. But still, I think a lot to be desired when you start to think about what's this team going to look like once we get to the knockout stages of this tournament.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I think for our pals who've been watching this show for a while, I'm going to do a very quick tangent, very quick analogy, if you will allow me to. So I am lucky enough, I work with education support professionals, members of their union. So sometimes when I go and see members, I go to their place of work, I go to their schools. I was going to see somebody recently, and I saw a kid as I'm parking my car and going in. I see him getting off the bus, and he's got like the book bag unzipped. He's very clearly stuffing a sheet of paper as he's like running off the bus. He's stuffing the sheet of paper into the folder and then stuffing the folder in there. And I was like, aha, I remember that. It was a long time ago. I remember doing my homework on the bus sometimes. And I feel like that kind of is what happened with Arsenal, where it's just like, okay, we got to get this thing done. We got to get this math worksheet done real quick. And there is Lena Hurtig to get it done on the bus right before you got to run into first period. So you got it done. Was it pretty? Are you going to get a great grade for it? Maybe not. But hey, it's not a 0, and you're moving on. You're looking forward ahead. Hopefully you don't do it the next time. So it feels like that's kind of what happened with your Gunners today.
Yeah, totally agree with that. One last mini rant to kind of go on here. I know we love to say, okay, these coaches, they've got this inside information. They know what's happening at practice. They've got their finger on the pulse. They know so much more than we do. Rosa Kafaji needs to play more.
There we go. Let's go.
Like, she comes on in the 80-something minute. They don't score until she comes on. She wasn't super involved in the Hertig goal, but she did almost play Stina Blackstenius through for a second goal, just after the Hertig goal, basically out of nothing. So I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't care what's happening at practice. I don't care what other information our coaching staff has. Shout out to Renee Slager. She's doing a great job in an interim role. I wouldn't be disappointed if she gets the permanent gig. I think she's proved enough under really tough circumstances.
Sure.
But I need to see Rosa Kafaji. I know that she's produced at this level. She's produced in the very limited minutes that she's gotten. She's a young player. She's like years away from her prime. And this is a player that we saw contribute to this tournament last season. When she gets in these matches, it's like, why is this player not playing? She clearly, when the lights are on, is able to summon special moments consistently. I need more Kafaji minutes. Even if they don't bear fruit, those reps are incredibly important if this is a player that we want to build around.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I'm going to buy in on more Rosa Kafaji minutes. We enjoyed her game last year for BK Hack, and I will say it's an interesting proposition because you have Frida Maanum there. She wasn't like a superstar really in this match. I do want to point out it is kind of funny to think about. So like if you are thinking of like that number 10 kind of attacking midfielder role, so Frida Maanum in her last 3 matches before this Champions League match, she had a goal against Tottenham, played the full 90. She had a goal against Juventus, last week, played 60. She had a goal and an assist against Brighton. Those are 3 matches in a row that she had played. And then also, just for good measure, a few weeks back on October 29th against Albania, she had 4 goals for Norway in 66 minutes. So Frida Maanum in good form, but I'm with you. Like I yell this at coaches all the time. Again, it's easy for us to say, but I like to say it. If you're going to tell me it's impossible to play Frida Maanum and Rosa Kafaji at the same time, I don't believe you. We should at least try it. Like, we should at least see how it works. And if there are times where maybe Maanum doesn't have it as much, pull the cord a little earlier than the 88th minute and get Kafaji onto the field.
Yeah, totally agree with that. We have to make some room for a player like that. And we've been talking a lot about Lily Johannes, thinking about U.S. Women's National Team. Kind of reminds me of what Lily did against South Korea. It's just like, now she's on the pitch and now things are happening. New things are happening. And I think that kind of consistently happens when Kafaji gets opportunities. Very excited that Arsenal advances. One more team left to hit. This team has yet to advance. They're still scrapping for a spot. There's still a very outside chance that a team like Barcelona, no, I'm just joking, that mathematically they haven't yet clinched, but you already know what time it is. St. Pölten 1, Barcelona 4. What'd you see in this one?
I think it's going to work out for these plucky underdogs from Catalonia. So Barcelona 4, St. Pölten 1, like you said. St. Pölten stopped Barcelona from scoring in the first 20 minutes of this match. I think they prevented them from scoring in the first 30 minutes of the match before. And I don't say this to belittle STP in any way. I love the journey that they're on. If they continue to get better, they dominate the Austrian league. The commentator mentioned, if I heard it correctly, I believe the commentator said St. Pölten has not lost a league match in Austria since 2018. I think I heard that correctly. We can go back and fact check if we like. But, they moved midfielder Kamila Dubkova, essentially turning her from a midfielder into either a defensive midfielder or what at times just felt like a straight up third center back to kind of put in there to try to keep this thing as low scoring as possible. But Dubkova made a critical error, turned her back on Kika of Nazareth and kind of played with the ball a little bit. And Kika just immediately runs up onto her, dispossesses her, and drills it into the back of the net. You could see, I want to harken back to our NWSL last show that we did, where you talk about when Orlando Pride gave up that goal and they immediately came into what you described as like the tightest huddle you could possibly come into. And everybody's like, okay, we're going to fix this. We're going to figure this out. Karina Schluter absolutely tried her hardest to get that team to get into a tight huddle and be like, look, okay, I realize that was bad, but we're going to be okay here. And it was not a very tight huddle. People got into the huddle. Karina Schluter is obviously a leader, but you could see the look on some of those faces like, oh boy, here we go again.
Yeah. Shout out to Schluter. One of my favorites.
She's awesome.
Must be tough. Imagine not losing a game in half a decade or something. And then you've got to go up against Barcelona and things are not going well. You just don't have those reps, those kind of tough uphill kind of reps to kind of go to.
Yeah.
It makes it a little bit difficult. And while we're on the subject of players that need to be getting more playing time, how about Kika Nazareth? Can we find a couple more minutes for Kika? I know it's St. Pölten, not the toughest of opposition, but this still is the Champions League group stage. It definitely made the most of these minutes. Not every player, when they get an opportunity, will slam their foot on the gas to that extent.
Yeah.
But I thought she was locked in. She was super hungry. And I think we saw really just a sliver of what a player like Nazareth is able to do.
Yeah, I mean, she had an assist in only 14 minutes against Real Madrid in league play. She scored and had an assist in the reverse fixture at home against St. Pölten. So, I mean, when she gets on there, she makes the most of her time. But yeah, I mean, she is one of absolutely the best forwards in the world. Her second goal was absolutely as calm as you like. Collects the ball, turns, slots it in, easy peasy brace. I mean, she is just an electric player, and playing in that cold weather, no sleeves for Kika. There is no end to the list of things I love about watching Kika Nazareth play football. And just the fact that she's like, no, I don't care. No sleeves for me. Let's go play.
I love that no sleeves is your
I love it.
It's your the greatest hallmark for just an absolute warrior when it comes to, and it's only Champions League, these winter evening matches that just kind of gets you the way I don't think anything else does in the sport of football.
I immediately just start doing push-ups in my living room when I see a player go out sleeveless. I will say I have renounced a great deal of my Midwestern roots of being a person born in the Midwest, living in New York for a long time, now living out here in Seattle. I would tell you, it must be biological or something, but that hypes me up when you see somebody go Green Bay Packers offensive lineman style. I don't care how cold it is, I'm not wearing sleeves.
It's awesome. And I think from there, Barcelona gets off to a good start. Not the full squad, but still some really nice moments, I think, from both sides.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it can just turn on a dime. Obviously, St. Pölten doing a much better job of keeping these kind of matches close, especially this week, like you'd mentioned. But with Barcelona, it can just still turn into an and one mixtape moment whenever one of the players is able to make it happen. So Patry just decides, oh yeah, right here at the top of the 18, this is the perfect opportunity for me to turn and back heel a pass. Alexia, because she's just a supercomputer of good decisions, is hey, yeah, I'll let this go. And it goes right to Vicky Lopez, the wonder kid, who then slams it home. It's 3-0. We're going into halftime 3-0. And at that point, it felt like, okay, this could end up one of those big crooked numbers. And then it didn't end up that way because it felt like Pölten was able to kind of do some of those things that you mentioned that Celtic did to Chelsea, where we're going to just kind of get in the way of some of your shots. They were real physical at times to just kind of try to knock you off the ball and make you uncomfortable. You don't often say it about 4-1 defeats. We talk about Roma having a kind of a weird 4-1 defeat to Lyon. But for Pölten, not a terrible result.
No, they were able to kind of get some shots off. They held Barcelona, held to 15 shots. That's a really, really stellar,
that's pretty good
defensive day. A couple more matches from St. Pölten. They've got City, they've got Hammarby. That Hammarby matchup, I think, is going to be really fun. Definitely some pride on the line. We'll see if Schluter is able to kind of muster up some more energy, some more tight energy for whatever player's only huddle she wants to hold on the field in that one. But I continue to like this STP side, how they're looking. Barcelona, again, not the full complement of firepower, but I thought they did look good in spots. They still have that sheen on them as probably the best team in the field. Yeah. Barcelona still feels like the class of the tournament.
Yeah, gotta be. Class of the tournament, class of the world, class of the universe at this point. I don't know if there's a women's football team somewhere on Saturn or Jupiter, or I don't know how planets where I don't know which one of those might Orlando. Be a gaseous planet. Yeah, wherever. Or Orlando. Look at that. Still waiting on that match. We got to see that played at some point. But a couple other notes: 200 goals for Alexia Putellas in her career at Barcelona. Amazing. Absolutely incredible. I do think we need to shout out St. Pölten pulling one back on a skidding free kick. It looked like somebody skipping a rock over a small pond, the way Maria Mikhailiova delivers this free kick. And you know what? I'll say I don't really hold this one against Kata Koi, because she kind of had to freeze when Dubkova is right there kind of coming across the face, and Dubkova can't get there, but Koi had to be in that spot. And then Valentina Madel just comes on the back post and is able to knock it home. Again, I know it can come off as a little bit of participation trophy nonsense, but seriously, you think about the resources and the history and just everything that's stacked up between some of these teams in this Champions League format. That is super rad for St. Pölten to notch a goal against Barcelona in a Champions League match. So yeah, you lose 4-1, but that is something for your fans to remember and hold on to, and then think about as you continue to build your program to see where you might get one day. So amazing moment for Valentina Madel. Again, it was a clever, interesting way to hit a free kick by Mikhailiova, and it worked out. So, I mean, good on all of them.
Yeah, and I think you hear teams and players talk about the desire to keep a clean sheet and kind of how serious these teams and players take that. You know that that's not a goal that Barcelona wants to give up or is willing to accept as, okay, normal course of business. No, exactly. That's something that they're going to look at and say, we need to fix this. Really great moment for STB. Great call out by you. I want to hit a couple quick programming reminders. We've got the NWSL final. We will be back with a recap of that final. Next weekend, we're going to be back to break down the U.S. women's national team and their match against England taking place at Wembley. And Champions League is back the week of December 11th, December 12th. That's when Matchday 5 goes down. We'll talk about the previews for those matches. We'll talk about machinations, some big time stakes tied to that. But either way, we'll be back before Matchday 5 kicks off. Help you get properly excited, help you properly preview. You already know what time it is. I think the Champions League is absolutely our domain, our space. And I think as we hit the stretch run, we're also hitting the stretch run.
I mean, just consider this show, the Kika Nazareth of the UEFA Women's Champions League. This is our space, sleeves, no sleeves, whatever. We show up ready to play. We show up ready to score goals. That's what we do. We're about this.
Yeah, except we're always in at least a second layer for sure. I don't think we've ever gone one layer either.
I mean, it's chilly down in my office. I mean, give me a break. I'm not as tough as Kika. Come on.
All right, man. I think we did it. It's been another episode of Into the Channel. Sincere. Thank you for watching, listening, following, liking, subscribing, just plain hanging out with your boys. And remember to like if you liked and subscribe or follow Into the Channel, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to watch or listen. Leave us a review over your favorite podcast app. Links to all of our socials in the show notes of this episode. And a big thank you to my co-host as well, Mr. Grand Angle, for always being sleeved up. The Kika of Nazareth to my Rosa Kafaji. I appreciate you, bro. Get us more playing time. We need more playing time, damn it.
Likewise. And we appreciate all of you for giving us the playing time. You could let your friends know if they like women's football, be like, hey, are these two American bros? They talk about the Champions League. They talk about the NWSL. They talk about lots of stuff. You could help us out. We appreciate you. But for already helping us out and rocking with us, leaving the comments, putting us on game, educating us as always. We'll be back for the next round of group stage matches, and we will see you guys next time.